a quick introduction on the pan and zoom feature and some tips and tricks that you can use to make your videos more interesting. First thing we're going to do is create the video. If we have a look, we'll see we'll go for a whiteboard, and resolution, we'll go for the HD resolution, and we'll just do it on a whiteboard. The title will be Doodly, let's go Doodly pan and zoom. And let's create that right. Here we are in the interface, and we are looking at our layout. On the left hand side we have our props, fonts, sounds. On the right hand side we have the scene settings, and then at the bottom we have the timeline, and this over here is the pan and zoom function. So the first thing we have to remember when it comes to creating the pan and zoom is to use your canvas. Don't be scared to use your canvas. So let's have a look. Let's just go with the standard font there. Let's have a look, and let's say plan your canvas and use the space. What I mean by that is we can, because we're using the pan and zoom feature, go really small. It's a vector drawing, which means that it doesn't pixelate, and it means that we can zoom in really tight. To create some timing now, because at the moment we only have the 1.6 seconds, which is indicated here for that text to draw. So there are a couple of options open to us. What we can do is extend the timing of the scene. So we can go into scene settings and say extend time at the end, let's say by an extra 5 seconds. That will give us a little bit more space in our video to start playing with the pan and zoom, especially when you have very few assets. What we can also do is go into our catalog of items, and let's go and have a look for a picture. So what we can do is we're going to look for something that says use the space. So let's go into the search and look for something related to space. And as we're starting the clip, let's have a look at the space shuttle. Get that to load, and once again it is a vector file, so we can go in nice and small. And because we're looking at the shape of our video, in this case it's an HD, so it is more rectangular and flat. What we might want to do with the text is change the setting on the text and allow word wrap. In the word wrap, very small, let's zoom into the page. And what we can do now is by changing the size of the box, it will automatically adjust the text. We now see that on the page, and as you can see, it's really, we zoom out to 100%, it's really small. So first, pan and zoom. The first thing that we're going to do here on the pan and zoom, at panning and zooming, is we want to zoom into that space. As you can see, there's nothing to zoom into at the beginning of the frame because it still has to draw the text. So to make that easier, let's change that to 0, and let's change that to 0. And that means that the text will be immediately visible, and what we might want to do then is change that back to, let's say, 1.5 seconds, and let's delay the shuttle coming in until after the text is drawn, which is going to be 1.5, and then it will magically appear. So now if we look at our pan and zoom, you'll see in this window that right there at the bottom we can see the shuttle. What we'll do then is we'll set the pan and zoom then to pan in and to end. It'll pan and zoom now onto that scene. So if we run the preview, we pan and zoom in. Let's do that again. pan, just drag the corners. The aspect ratio of the screen is always preserved, so you don't have to worry that you're creating something that doesn't fit. So we've done that. We hit apply. If you don't hit apply, it won't save. We can now move that to the beginning of the scene, and we can preview our scene. Now that we've created the first scene, the beginning of the animation, we'll see that the hand, because we're zooming in to such a small area, you'll see that the hand actually gets in the way. So we're going to disable the hand so that when we are zoomed into a very small area, the hand isn't hiding the text, making it difficult for somebody who wants to read what's on the screen. So we'll go without the hand. What we're going to do now is have a look at the next content element. So we can look at our canvas, and we see that we can decide to go in any direction from the center. So in this case, we're going to move from the center out. So in the beginning, we said plan your scene, use the space. We can now add another element into our scene, and let's call this one, let's change that text to clear message. So in the introduction, you want to create a clear message for people to remember. And over here, we might want to look for something along the words, let's try detail. So a clear message with a bit of detail. Let's maybe go with a announce. Right, so we have that image. We can now reduce the size, and we say we want a clear message. Let's move that up there. Let's change that drawing time to 1 second and leave that as it is. We can now add a second pan and zoom item, position it kind of where we think it's going to be, and then by clicking on it, opens up the window, and we can see it's maybe a little bit too late in the scene because it's already drawn. So what we want to do then is move it back and have a look there, and we can see it's not there, but it is there, so we're nearly in the right spot. So maybe go back just a little bit. We then click, we can have the start and we have the end. So the end now, what we can do is very easily move it up to where we want it to be. And as the typing isn't finished, we might want to make it a little bit bigger so that the word fits. We can hit apply. It was still a little bit early, so let's move it back, and let's make the transition time a little smaller. Now we can preview the scene. Zooms in to plan your canvas. Oh, that's too fast. What we'll do then to create more time is we can delay that item by 2 seconds. That gives us enough time to get the message across. Now when we preview our scene, there's enough time to plan your canvas, use the space. You can see the shuttle. It then moves to clear message. And that is pretty good timing. It gives me enough time to read, plan your canvas, use the space, and then clear message. Now, one of the techniques that you can use to engage user interest, of course, is in the drawing of the items. In this case, this draws in a very quick time. So if you want to buy some time or create some time and you don't want a still screen, you can add another image to give people time to read the text. To illustrate that, let's have a look at our next content element. Let's go back to the text tool. Let's add, and we'll make this one a little bit longer. So we'll say, what makes a clear message? And we're going to put on the word wrap just in case we need to adjust that. Now there's going to be quite a lot of writing here, so we want to make this pretty small. Now you'll see that we're going from small to big and back to small, but you'll see that with the pan and zoom, it really doesn't matter. What makes a clear message? Let's go with the first one, to the point, right, easy to read, easy to understand, so no big words, and you have an image to complement the text. So we're keeping it really simple, really plain. So you can see now we have quite a lot of writing and it's a lot smaller. So let's zoom in here, and maybe that's being a little bit too small. What we can do is make that slightly bigger. And let's move it in. So we make good use of our canvas. It doesn't matter if it overlaps a little bit. That's absolutely fine. If you can't see what you're doing, you can move it down a bit, click on the buttons that you need to click, and then move it back. So let's put that in over there and indent it just a little bit. And there's a bit more text. So we do want to add another image here. So the image here that we could add would be, let's say, notes. So let's have a look at something for notes. And in this case, maybe we want to include a person. So we include notes. If we're not happy with that, we could go with writing. That's a little bit better. We can scroll down, look through the pictures, they come up automatically, so it's quite nice and easy. There's someone taking notes, which looks quite good. And let's fit them into our scene. Right, so we've created the scene. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to go and draw we're going to put in the wording first, the text first, and then we're going to draw the image. And the reason for that is that while the picture's drawing, it's going to give people more time to read what's on the screen. So to illustrate that, let's just have a look at it as it currently is. So if we were to preview our animation, plan your canvas, use the space, then move to clear message. We won't see it. Let's add in the pan and zoom. That's quite nice. It fits in quite nicely, and we can tighten it up just a little. And we'll apply that. But what we'll do is we'll move the image to the beginning. We also saw from here that it was already drawn. So we want to go back a bit. Now we know that it's going to end and then quickly move down. So we will want to delay the start of the scene. So once again, to delay, we go to the first item of the next piece of content and we delay that by 2 seconds. We then have another look at and we'll see that it's just the beginning of the drawing over there. So if we move that in just a little bit, and let's shorten the duration. Now when we preview our scene, so one of the downsides of doing the pan and zoom feature is that it takes a bit of time, because to preview you have to wait each time for the whole thing to play through. So here we can see it moves over. It's a little bit late in the animation, so we'll move that across quite a bit more. We'll go to preview again, use the space shuttle appears, clear message, person is drawing, and now we wait. So you'll see there we had to wait for the person to draw. We then had to wait for the text, and then straight after that we're going to have a look at moving on to the next item. So what we want to do is we want to move that drawing down to the bottom. We'll take the delay off there, and we'll move the delay to the first item in the scene. This time it's going to be the heading. Now what happens is that while the text is inserted, the drawing plays. So it does buy us time for people to read what's being written. So we'll move on to the scene, what makes a clear message, to the point, easy to understand, imaged. And this is where the drawing of the image gives people enough time to read without being under pressure that we're going to move on to the next item. We can move that just a little bit to the left, and that should then be in the right spot. If we want to preview our animation, we can say show preview. We'll see if we do that preview that it is already drawn. So let's move it a little bit more to the left. And now we'll see it's come in really nicely. So let's have a look at that, and then let's preview the scene again. So plan your canvas, use the space, a clear message, and what makes a clear message, to the point, easy to understand, image to complement the text. While the picture's drawing, I've got enough time to read what's on the screen before it moves on to the next item. As you can see, we're now creating a circular motion. So to engage the user more, we might want to include another prop, and this could be in the form of an arrow. Now, there are a couple of arrows available inside Doodly, so we can either use one of those, or these are some arrows that I've created specifically for a project. If we do decide to use an arrow, we can bring that into the scene, and you'll see that it doesn't really fit, but what we can do is we can rotate the arrow and we can adjust the size. So this is going to make it a little bit more interesting, because we're going to give somebody a bit of direction as to what's going to happen next. So we bring in the arrow. Now that we've brought in the arrow, we want to move it up to below that scene. So we move that up. Clear message, there's the arrow. We're going to drop the drawing time right down to 1 second, which means then that this transition would need to move on. If we check that transition now, let's have a look at that transition. You'll see that the arrow is there and the text is just beginning to display. So let's move it back just a little bit. And now when we preview our animation, still a little bit too tight. So it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of messing around to get it perfectly right. So there we can see it's just beginning to write the message. Move it to the left just a little bit more, and we should be in the right spot. So now when we preview that transition, that's perfect. So let's have a look at that now with the arrow. So the first one we have is plan your canvas, use the space. What happens next? Clear message. The arrow immediately starts to engage you. Great idea. So let's add the arrow, and we can stick to the same style of arrow now. So let's add that one there. Let's give it a rotation, or we can flip it. We can reduce the size a bit, but I think we're going to flip it again. And what we can do is put it slightly on top. We then go to the bottom, we move that up, we drop it in just after the shuttle, which means that we want to draw that very quickly. That remains the same, but now it does mean that your transitions have to move on. They don't move on automatically when you insert another item. That means we will need to check that everything fits. So we can see that it's not going to fit there as a result. So what we'll do is on the first one where it ends, so we're going to make it just a little bit bigger and apply. This one over here then will go from that. It's just starting to draw, so we'll want to move it back just a little bit. And when you have a lot of pan and zoom items, you might want to use that timeline indicator just so that you can keep track of where you are. And that one might want to go back just a fraction. So now when we have a look at our pan and zoom, it's starting to look more interesting. Plan your canvas, use the space. There's the arrow. We follow the arrow, clear message. The next arrow comes up, takes us down to what makes a clear message, to the point, easy to understand, image to complement the text. So what we're doing here at the moment is building a storyboard and an interesting picture and engaging the user in something interesting which is going to hold their attention, and they'll want to see what's coming next. So in order to create the what's coming next, we need to give them another arrow, and we'll put in that arrow there, scroll down, and let's rotate it maybe like that. So we have this up arrow, down arrow, and then swinging in again to the right, and we'll squeeze that in there. So that arrow is going to come in right at the end of that scene. Unfortunately, there's no way to go to that. We hit preview, we can hit and now the arrow says we're going to go in that direction. So maybe what we'll do is we'll tilt it just a little bit. Not really making sense there. So let's flip that around. Or maybe we want to bring in that arrow and rotate. Maybe we'll do something along those lines. So once again, something interesting. No, I think that's the one, is to go in that direction for the next message. And the next message could be, let's talk about timing. So timing, and because it's the start of a new piece of content, we know that there will be a delay. So let's change that to 2 seconds, or maybe a little bit less because we have the drawing going and we have the arrow coming in. So we have, let's have a look at timing. And in timing, let's say, let's wrap the text and let's say, give the viewer enough time to read. Add images to buy time and delay the first item of each scene. And that gives you enough time for the transition to take place. So there we go. We have our next piece of text and it's looking rather big. We did put on the wrap text. Let's make that a bit smaller. Once again, we know that we can go very small because we're going to be zooming in. So let's make that a little bit bigger. Let's move timing there. Move that over there. Let's use the space, and for a prop, let's go with timing. Nothing, so probably we'll find something under time. Right, there we go. We have this under time, and there's something a little bit different, so that might be interesting. Nice vertical image, and we can drop that down there. And then we know that because this is the end of the scene, we will need an arrow. So let's look for another arrow. And in this case, we're going to be moving out to the left. So we don't want anything too fancy. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go with this arrow just for something different. It's an arrow that I made as an SVG vector and pulled it in. That's not going to work. Then maybe it'll have to be this arrow just to keep the style the same, and we'll fit it in at the bottom of the screen. We can change this as we need to. We are the architects here of what we're creating, and maybe what we want to do is see what we get time with maybe a person. Let's go with Tim in case there's something under timing. No. Okay, so we'll go with that for now. We need to add another panning and zoom point. Let's put that in there and let's see where we are in the timeline. Let's move that forward until we see that the scene is starting. There we have it. So let's move that a little bit to the left and a little bit more. Right, hasn't started yet, so we'll put that on. We'll move it down into the corner and we'll enlarge it just a little bit so we can see the top end of that arrow in the scene. Now if we preview the scene, we can move along straight away, click in the timeline, we can forward it to that point to read and images to delay the first item. Let's go back. So there we have stop and the arrow. Not maybe the ideal arrow, might want to create our own in this case, but let's move that and go with something entirely different. Right. Let's preview that. We can move along to where we want to be. Right, so we can see that we have the clear message, the arrow, then we move on to timing, give the viewer enough time to read, add images to buy time, delay the first item of each scene for the transition. There's the picture coming in, gives us enough time to read, and there's the arrow. Now that we're heading towards the end of the video, we might want to put in a call to action to get the person watching to do something, visit a website, buy a product. So let's go and have a look at that. Let's go in here and let's go with a call to action. That could be to buy something, go to a website, could also be make a call. So that we want to create, and we also want to make that something nice and big with very little ambiguity. It must be a clear call to action. And those are just 3 of the options. We'll go back to maybe something a little bit bigger because it's a call to action. And because it's a call to action, we'll look for something a little bit more interesting. I don't know if there will be something under megaphone. No, perfect. Now we'll see that the name of that girl is Camilla. So let's see if there's anything in the library. Right, there we go. See if there isn't anything else where she's using a megaphone that might be more in line with what we want to do. So no, so let's go with that call to action there. And this time we're going to change the timing just a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is we know that the call to action needs to have a delay. So in this case, not a lot, because let's face it, we already have the arrow and we had the hourglass drawing. So we'll only make that half a second. Then what we'll do is we'll go with the megaphone first, but we'll make that very quick. Then we'll have the call to action, and we'll also probably, let's make that, and then we'll make the text come in at the normal speed. So call to action, buy something, go to a website, make a call. We'll now add in the transition. So not there, a little bit to the right. Okay, that looks like the end. So here we have the move to the call to action. Position it like that to get all the text in. We can have a look at a preview. So that's pretty good timing. By the time you get there, the megaphone's already in place and the message is coming up. So you're expecting to see something. So that's perfect. What we'll do though is we'll just make that a little bit smaller. It looks like she was coming off the bottom of the page, and we'll move that up just a little bit. We'll have a look at our preview. So we're looking at our preview. Plan your canvas. Let's move it ahead towards the end. So that's a nice, clear call to action right there in the middle of that content block. That pretty much wraps up creating your pan and zoom effect. And of course, you can make a much more interesting presentation than what you see here. So if we look at it from the beginning, we'll see you've got plan your canvas, use the space. It then moves up following the arrow to the clear message, telling us that we're moving down now to what makes a clear message. It's to the point, easy to understand, image to complement the text. The image comes in, and then the arrow shows there's more content. We move down, timing, give the viewer enough time to read, add images to buy time, delay the first item of each scene with the transition. Then we have a look at an arrow to the final item, which is the call to action to buy something, go to a website, make a call. That could be the end of the scene. But if you'd like to show people what the finished picture looks like, if you think that that would be something that is visually appealing, what you can do is maybe go into the scene settings and add maybe another 5 seconds. So we'll change that to 10, apply. You'll see now that the end of the presentation has moved out. And what we can do is add another panning zoom. And now we can move that one to the corner there, apply, preview that. When we look at the ending now, we have the call to action, stays there for a while, and then it zooms out to show the person watching the clip what the whole picture looks like. So if you've made something really interesting, that will be very interesting. What you can also do now is come in and start to add a little bit of color. So clear message, we might want to make that in red. So we'll click on the gear and we'll change the color. Make that red. Might want to highlight all our headings in red just to let the person know that that is something important. If you go in and it doesn't work with the red, just move it around again. Apply. Timing. Let's go in, color red, move that to where you want it to be, hit apply. And then we have the call to action. And that we can also. So there we have it. On the images, if we click on the gear, so we can change the outline of the images, but of course there's no fill here. So once again, this could be used to make it more interesting. We can come in, we can change the color of the arrow. Maybe we're going to go with a nice purple color there. Choose that. Now we have to select color, purple, color, Right, so we're starting to see that it's becoming a little bit more interesting with the color as well, and as different colors are associated with different items, it starts to give people an idea of the kind of movement to expect. So the image in the picture, which is not really, which is really just to fill in the scene, there we might go with something completely different in each case, making it quite a colorful presentation in the end. Let's make that one blue. The megaphone, we could go with something orange. And the shuttle right at the end, we could go with maybe that red. And the call to action right at the end would be maybe some text that we'd like to change the color of. And maybe we'll go with that deep green. Right, so now if we preview our message, we'll see plan your canvas, use the space, nice shuttle with a bit of color. And you'll already see that with the addition of color, it already makes quite a big difference to the scene. Go with the timing. Keeping the text in black also makes it easier to recognize that is text to read. Once again, we see the purple, we know that there's an arrow coming in. Call to action, buy something, go to a website, make a call, and then the final zoom out. So that wraps up a pretty basic overview of what's possible and some tips when using the pan and zoom feature. Thank you for watching.